two data sets put together by the India Today Data Intelligence Unit. I want to show those to you. One looks at which particular localities, which particular districts have huge number of cases relative to the rest of the country. Here it is on your screen right now, and bear with me as I explain this. The darker the shade of green you see, the less affected that particular area is. The darker the shade of red that you're seeing, the more COVID impacted this particular zone is. And those districts which don't have any color are districts which haven't reported any corona cases. So there are about 330 odd districts at this moment which have some corona cases. There's a lot of green, which means mercifully at this time in India there aren't too many badly impacted zones. However, as you see certain pockets, especially in parts of Maharashtra near Mumbai, in parts of Madhya Pradesh near Indore, this whole national capital region, Delhi, Noida, Ghaziabad, these are areas that have seen a lot of COVID-19 cases. So this is India's COVID-19 hotspot map. I want to go across at this time to a very important man. He has been instrumental at a policy level in helping the government determine its strategy from here on, through the lockdown and even beyond. He runs the NITI Aayog, vice chairperson of the NITI Aayog, one of the country's foremost economists. Dr. Rajiv Kumar is now live with us on the news track. Dr. Kumar, welcome. Great to have you with us. How has the lockdown been for you? All of us, Aam Aadmi, have been struggling quite badly. How do the Khas Aadmi of India do in the middle of a lockdown, Dr. Kumar?
And not too much of a Khas Aadmi, Rahul, but been reasonably good. God had a lot of time to catch up on one's reading, but now being in the office also. I mean, because the government runs, and the Prime Minister has said very clearly that this is the time to work harder to make to keep things in track. So all in all, God's grace, quite well.
Sir, the NITI Aayog's suggestions have been instrumental in helping the government determine its strategy for the lockdown and even later. I want to deal with how the lockdown has gone from your perspective. When you look at it sitting where you are at the head of the NITI Aayog, has this lockdown met your expectations, surpassed your expectations? Have you felt it to be underwhelming?
Well, I think we must begin by saying that this was the far-sightedness of the Prime Minister, who declared the lockdown when he did, which is quite ahead of the curve in some sense. And I think it was recognized all over the world that he had acted in very good time. And to that extent, I think we've managed the lockdown very well. There have been some cases, of course, which could have been avoided. But nonetheless, I think the only two instances that I can think which didn't go as planned was one, the issue of the migrant labor, but then which was sorted out quite quickly. But then the whole issue of the Nizamuddin incident has actually set us back a fair bit. If you look at the numbers, then without the Nizamuddin incident happening, we were doubling in about 6.5, 7 days the numbers. But with that incident happening, the number of days required to double had gone down to 3.5 to 4. So now that's a major difference, and I sincerely, honestly believe, wish that it didn't happen. But apart from those two, and I think in as vast a country as this, as an informal economy as large as this is I think very well. This is a very good going.
Now, so over the past 72 hours, we've seen three separate sets of indications from the higher sources in the government. The Prime Minister indicating to people he's been meeting that the extension of a lockdown is inevitable. Now, you realize well, sir, that virtually every person watching you at this time has had enough of this lockdown. They would like very much for life to get back to normal. Why is it that you and government believe that an extension of this lockdown is inevitable? What do you hope to achieve in the 2 extra weeks that this lockdown might be extended for?
Rahul, one, I think I should clarify that the PM, having hinted what I've heard from in the all-party meet, etc., hasn't said that the lockdown will continue as it is today, in the sense of being a blanket lockdown, etc., etc. Now we don't know the details, but there could be a very nuanced, granulated, staggered approach towards how we exit from the current situation. And for example, we know, for example, that about 400 districts in India haven't had even one case. Your map showed that also. Now, in those districts, you could have a different approach than to those 62 districts, where you have 80% of the cases. And now, and within, as Minister Siddharth Nath Singh was saying, that even within each zone, like a Noida, etc., you could have if you like, a hyper-local approach, which is that you seal off one particular sector so that your special economic zone, which is also located in Noida, gets back to some activity, or the huge plants that are there in Greater Noida, the mobile telephone plants, etc., where you have limited number of workers which can maintain the social distance, which can have all the protocols in place. You could see some activity there. So I'm not sure whether anybody has hinted from the government that this is going to be just a continuation of the same. So let's wait for the government to come up with its own, real and sort of pakka announcement in the coming few days, and see what happens. The second thing that I think is very important is that we have to balance lives versus livelihoods. I completely agree that all of us have had enough of this, and we would rather get on with our usual business and so on. But what we've seen all over the world is that that's a luxury that at this moment we can't afford for the sake of our own, brethren, sisters' lives. Because that's the trade-off, and that trade-off is a very stark one. It's a very difficult one. It's not an easy choice. It's almost like, you would say it's like Sophie's choice, because we know that both of those are as important as the other. But that balance has to be maintained, and I think that calls for very good calibration and very good data, and also some idea of how we are going forward. How it looks going
one of the key parts of the lives versus livelihoods puzzle that you look at is the livelihoods part. I'm looking at an OECD chart that came out this morning, which looks at the impact of lockdowns on economic activity in G20 countries. And when it comes to India, it says that in India, the GDP could contract by upwards of 20%, just around 20%. So it's about 18% in this chart, that the GDP could contract by 18% as a result of this lockdown. Now, what are your calculations showing you? How much is going to be the economic blow as a consequence of this lockdown? And what are your suggestions to try and alleviate that situation, sir?
I think, well, first, I have not seen this OECD study. I'll be grateful if you would forward that to me.
I'm forwarding it to you right now.
I'd love to have a look at it. Second is that I'm sure, in fact, that this 20%, 18% number that you're giving is only for this quarter and not for the year as a whole. Because this quarter and that would be in some sense expected, because you've got 4 weeks of this quarter pretty much gone but let's see, and let me come back to that. So I'm sure it's not for the whole year. The third is that we have in NITI Aayog not yet made any estimation. We've not tried to quantify the GDP growth rate for the fiscal year 2021, simply because we are in such a dynamic situation. We don't know how we will, how this is going to, play out, and lots will depend on where this curve takes us. The curve for, for the spread, infections and mortality. A lot will depend.
So
upon
a wing
that.
in the NITI Aayog deals with public health. What are they telling you, sir? Okay, first you complete. Go on, please.
What I do want to complete is that, look, we are not the G20. We are not the OECD. We are not the advanced economies. And therefore, in our case, for example, agriculture, the Rabi harvest which is coming in, and we have 2 or 3 harvests a year, is very important. Now, there the government has already declared all agriculture-related services to be essential. And those operations are, hopefully, continuing apace. and have now picked up pace wherever they are. So that part of our GDP is going to be saved, as it were, and that does contribute, if you like, each season, a 9% or 8% of the GDP. So that we will be able to preserve. So may not be that bad. Yes, there are some sectors which will be impacted, but I'm not sure how the OECD has come up with this number of 18%, which to me looks like an exaggeration, looks like an overestimate.
That chart from the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development is now in your WhatsApp, so you can take a look at it later. But finally, there's a wing in the NITI Aayog that deals with public health. What are they telling you? What are their internal models telling you? How do they think the curve that you just spoke about, the trajectory tracker for COVID-19, where do they think that trajectory tracker in India is heading to next, Dr. Kumar?
They've got several scenarios that they're working with. But what they are actually very much looking at and focused is upon how we do in this week and then the week after, because these are the critical 2 weeks where we hope, where they hope that the rate of spread will be controlled or will begin to plateau. Now, I think all of us agree that we will need a review again after 2 weeks before we can say where these numbers are going. But the focus really is to try and limit the spread in the hotspots where they are. As Siddharth Singh was saying, go to a lockdown plus strategy for this. I believe there are 62 districts which account for 82% of all infections. I think so. Those 62 districts can be the focus so that we can prevent, the rapid rise. May I just say that I don't believe the models that have come or the trends that we have seen in advanced economies, the rate at which this is spread is applicable to India for various reasons. I don't want to go into those, but I doubt if that's if those trends can be applied right here and models developed. I have seen some models which say that this could, and it's incredible, we could go from anywhere between 6,000 cases a day to 3 lakh cases a day. Now, these are not analytically, sound models, and people are just making all sorts of conjectures here. So, but we need to wait for the next 2 weeks, this one and the next one, before we can say where we are going, with the virus and its spread.
As someone who looks at data very closely, most people will feel that we're only now being able to, through the India Today group, get opinion polling and exit polling right. And there you have to judge what's in the mind of a voter. The voter is a human being. Here you're dealing with a virus, and the success of any model depends on the assumptions you feed into it. The assumptions are moving variables, and given the fact that the assumptions themselves are moving variables, there is huge variation in each of those models. So they're actually, which is why we're doing very little modeling here, because they're not really rigorous. In the United States, there's a lot of modeling, but the Indian government wisely in the Indian context has chosen not to make those models public, because it could create unnecessary fear and panic, and you don't even know whether they're worth the paper they're written on. Dr. Rajiv Kumar, stay well, stay safe, read more, tell us more, keep joining us again. Thank you so much for joining us. Wish you all the best.
Stay well, stay safe.
Thank you. We might be locked up from tomorrow, so yes, stay well, stay safe. This could potentially be, we'll see how this goes, but this could potentially be, for a while at least, the last news track from the Mediaplex. We fortunately set up a studio back home, so that could be where we broadcast from tomorrow. We'll see how this goes. We'll try our best, of course, to be here in the Mediaplex with you. We're slipping into a quick break. When we come back, we'll shift our attention to the other big story. India is ramping up the production of hydroxychloroquine.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kanwal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.